Jai Hind children, welcome in your history class. Today we are going to start a new topic, and that is the sense of collective belonging. Okay, you know that India is a huge country with so many diversities in the name of language, culture, caste, etc. children. Today we are going to discuss that history, folklore, language, popular prints, symbols, all these things played an important role in developing a sense of collective belongingness which we feel towards our own country, a sense of oneness. These prints and symbols played an important role, children, to develop a sense of nationalism among the people, among all the Indian children. So, one by one, we are going to discuss those things which played an important role in developing a sense of collective belongingness. Now, you can see the topic on the screen, children. The sense of collective belongingness. You can see picture of Bal Gangadhar Tilak, and Tilak is surrounded by symbols of unity. You can see the image of Bharat Mata. Then you can see the image, the sacred institutions of different faiths such as temple, church, etc. children. So children, nationalism spreads when people begin to believe that they are all part of the same nation, when they discover some unity that binds them together. But how did the nation become a reality in the minds of people? How did people belonging to different communities, regions, or language groups develop a sense of collective belonging? So, this sense of collective belonging came partially through the experience of united struggles. There were also a variety of cultural process through which nationalism captured people's imagination. History and fiction, folklore and songs, popular prints and symbols all played an important role in the making of nationalism, children. So one by one we are going to discuss. The first is the image of Bharat Mata. You can see on the screen, children, the image of Bharat Mata, a painting which was made by Abhindranath Tagore, children. So the first symbol is a figure or image. So the identity of the nation is most often symbolized in a figure or image, and this helps to create a feeling of belongingness, children. This helps create an image with which people can identify the nation. हमेशा हम लोग कहते हैं ना भारत माता, माता और she figure, children. So the image of Bharat Mata develop a sense of belongingness towards our own country. So the identity of the nation is most often symbolized in a figure or image. This helps create an image with which people can identify the nation. It was in the 20th century, with the growth of nationalism, that the identity of India came to be visually associated with the image of Bharat Mata. So the image was first created by Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay. Then, so this is the first image or figure, you can say that, which develop a sense of collective belongingness towards our own country. The second thing is the song, children, the national song. In the 1870s, Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay, he wrote Vande Mataram as a hymn to the motherland. Later it was included in his novel Anand Mat and widely sung during the Swadeshi movement in Bengal. So moved by the, do you remember that Swadeshi movement, that we were supposed to use the goods which are made in the country and we have to boycott the foreign made goods, children. So in the 1870s, Bankim wrote Vande Mataram as a hymn to the motherland. It was included in his novel Anand Mat and widely sung during the Swadeshi movement in Bengal. Moved by the Swadeshi movement, Abhindranath Tagore painted his famous image of Bharat Mata, which you can see on the screen, children. In this painting, which was painted by Abhindranath Tagore, Bharat Mata is portrayed as an ascetic figure. She is calm, composed, divine and spiritual. In subsequent years, you can see the image of Bharat Mata required many different forms as it circulated in popular prints and was painted by different artists. So devotion to this mother figure came to be seen as evidence of one's nationalism, children. So we have studied about two things which develop a sense of collective belongingness, which created a feeling of nationalism. One is image of Bharat Mata and the second one is national song, that is Vande Mataram. And he wrote Vande Mataram, he means Bankim wrote Vande Mataram as a hymn to the motherland, and it was sung widely during the Swadeshi movement in Bengal. So the third is folk song. So ideas of nationalism also developed through a movement to revive Indian folklore. In the late 19th century India, nationalists began recording folk tales sung by bards, and they toured villages to gather folk songs and legends. So these tales, they believed, gave a true picture of traditional culture that had been corrupted and damaged by outside forces. So the third symbol or third thing which created a feeling of nationalism is folklore, Indian folklore. Ideas of nationalism developed through a movement to revive Indian folklore, and these tales give a true picture of traditional culture that had been damaged by outside forces, children. So it was essential to preserve this folk tradition in order to discover one's national identity and restore a sense of pride in one's past. So the third is Indian folklore, and these also Indian folklore also give a true picture of traditional culture, and so it was essential to preserve this folk tradition in order to discover one's national identity and restore a sense of pride in one's past. In Bengal, Rabindranath Tagore himself began collecting ballads, nursery rhymes and myths, and led the movement for folk revival. In Madras, Natesha Shastri, he published a massive 4-volume collection of Tamil folk tales, the folklore of southern India. He believed that folklore was national literature. It was the most trustworthy manifestation of people's real thoughts and characteristics. So this was the third symbol or third thing which created a feeling of nationalism, children. One is image of Bharat Mata. Then second one is Vande Mataram, song written by Bankim and which was widely sung during the Swadeshi movement in Bengal. And the third was Indian folklore. And the nationalists began recording folk tales, and they believed that these folk tales gave a true picture of traditional culture. So it was essential to preserve this folk tradition in order to discover one's national identity and restore a sense of pride in one's past. You can see the picture of Jawaharlal Nehru. It is a popular print. Nehru is here shown holding the image of Bharat Mata and the map of India close to his heart. In a lot of popular prints, nationalist leaders are shown offering their heads to Bharat Mata. The idea of sacrifice for the mother was powerful within popular imagination, children. Even in Bengal, Rabindranath Tagore himself began collecting nursery rhymes, ballads and led the movement of folk revival. And in Madras, Natesha Shastri, do you remember the name? He published a massive 4-volume collection of Tamil folk tales, the folklore of southern India. He believed that, Natesha believed that folklore was national literature and it was the most trustworthy manifestation of people's real thoughts and characteristics. Then the next one is flag. As the national movement developed, nationalist leaders became more and more aware of such icons and symbols in unifying people and inspiring in them a feeling of nationalism. Sorry. During the Swadeshi movement in Bengal, a tricolor flag, and at that time the color of the flag was red, green and yellow. This tricolor flag was designed, children. So during the Swadeshi movement in Bengal, a tricolor flag, you have to mention the colors red, green and yellow was shown in the flag, children. It was designed and it had 8 lotuses. 8 कमल के फूल उसमें दिखाया गया था and 8 lotuses representing 8 provinces of British India. Okay. And a crescent moon, half moon, representing Hindus and Muslims. So during the Swadeshi movement in Bengal, a tricolor flag, red, green and yellow was a color. It was designed. So during the Swadeshi movement in Bengal, a tricolor flag was designed. It had 8 lotuses representing 8 provinces of British India and a crescent moon which was representing Hindus and Muslims. By 1921, Gandhi ji had designed the Swaraj flag. So in which year Gandhi ji designed the Swaraj flag? In the year 1921. Again, it was again a tricolor flag, but there were some changes in the color. Beforehand, it was red, green and yellow, but the tricolor flag which was designed by Gandhi ji, it was red, green and white. Red, green and white. Instead of yellow, it was white. It was having a spinning wheel in the center, and the spinning wheel was a symbol of self-help. It was a tricolor flag, red, green and white, and had a spinning wheel in the center representing the Gandhian ideal of self-help. It's carrying the flag, holding it aloft. During marches, it became a symbol of defiance. So as the national movement developed, nationalist leaders became more and more aware of such icons and symbols in unifying people and inspiring in them a feeling of nationalism. During the Swadeshi movement in Bengal, a tricolor flag, red, green and yellow, it was designed. It had 8 lotuses which was representing 8 provinces of British India. There was a crescent moon, half moon, and it represented Hindus and Muslims. By 1921, Gandhiji had designed the Swaraj flag. It was again a tricolor flag, but now the color was red, green and white. It had a spinning wheel in the center representing the Gandhian ideal of self-help. During marches, carrying the flag became a symbol of defiance. So, and the next one is reinterpretation of history. Another means of creating a feeling of nationalism was through reinterpretation of history, children. But before that, you can see a picture on the screen, image of Bharat Mata. You have seen the image of Bharat Mata which was painted by Abhinavnath Tagore. Now you can see another image of Bharat Mata. This figure of Bharat Mata is a contrast to the one painted by Abhinavnath Tagore. Here she is shown with a trishul standing beside a lion and an elephant, and both symbols of power and authority. Okay, so another meanings of creating a feeling of nationalism was through reinterpretation of history. By the end of the 19th century, many Indians began feeling that to instill a sense of pride in the nation, Indian history had to be thought about differently. Actually, children, the British saw Indians as backward and primitive, that Indians are not able to govern themselves. So this was another thing, you can say that another means of creating a feeling of nationalism, and that was reinterpretation of history, that Indians should look into the past to discover India's great achievements. We should have pride on our own history, children. So another means of creating a feeling of nationalism was through reinterpretation of history. By the end of the 19th century, many Indians began feeling that to instill a sense of pride in the nation, Indian history had to be thought about differently. The British saw Indians as backward and primitive, that Indians are incapable of governing themselves. In response, Indians began looking into the past to discover India's great achievements. They wrote about the glorious developments in ancient times when art and architecture, science and mathematics, religion and culture, law and philosophy, crafts and trade had flourished. This glorious time was followed by a history of decline when India was colonized, children. So, it was seen as a means of creating a feeling of nationalism, that was reinterpretation of history, that we have to the Indian historians, they should try to create a sense of pride in the nation, and Indian history had to be thought about differently, because the British always saw Indians as that they are primitive, they are backward, they are unable to govern themselves. So it was necessary to look into the past to discover India's great achievements. So they wrote about the glorious developments in ancient times when art and science, art and architecture, science and mathematics, religion and culture, law and philosophy, crafts and trade had flourished. So this glorious time in their view was followed by a history of decline when India was colonized. So the nationalist histories urge the readers to take pride in India's great achievements in the past and struggle to change the miserable conditions of life under British rule. So these efforts to unify people were not without problems. When the past being glorified was Hindu, when the images celebrated were drawn from Hindu iconography, then people of other communities felt left out. So we have studied that there were many symbols, icons, which were used by the Indian historians to develop a sense of belongingness. The one was the image of Bharat Mata, the second was the song Vande Mataram, then folklore, folk tales, and then flag, and the last one was reinterpretation of history, children. You can see in the source, in the earlier times, foreign travelers in India marveled at the courage, truthfulness and modesty of the people of the Arya Vans. Now they remark mainly on the absence of those qualities. In those days, Hindus would set out on conquest and hoist their flags in Tartar, China and other countries. Now a few soldiers from a tiny island far away are lording it over the land of India. So what we have studied in this chapter, children, a growing anger against the colonial government was bringing together various groups and classes of Indians into a common struggle for freedom in the first half of the 20th century. The Congress, under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi, tried to channel people's grievances, people's complaints into organized movements for independence. Through such movements, the nationalists tried to forge a national unity. They were trying to create a national unity. But we have seen that diverse groups and class participated in these movements with varied aspirations and expectations. They were having their own self-interest. So as the grievances were wide-ranging, freedom from colonial rule also meant different things to different people. The Congress continuously attempted to resolve differences and ensure that the demands of one group did not alienate another. So this is precisely why the unity within the movement often broke down. So the high points of Congress activity and nationalist unity were followed by phases of disunity and inner conflicts between groups. In other words, what was emerging was a nation with many voices wanting freedom from colonial rule, children. So there is a map question also in this chapter, and I'll be giving you, and I will be discussing you in the next period, and I'll be giving you the map question in your homework assignment, children. Okay, thank you. That's all for today.